Hey, what's up, guys? It's Jordan with the Laundromat Resource Podcast, show number 43. I'm pumped you're here today because today we have a human laundromat encyclopedia on with us. It is an incredible show. I cannot wait for you to hear this. So whether you own laundromats yourself or you're looking to buy your first one, you're going to learn a ton of stuff. I know I did. I took a lot of notes. Make sure you're taking notes too, because at the end, I'm going to ask you, what's the one thing, if you can narrow it down to one thing, that you're going to pull out of this episode to put into practice? Because that's where it's at. Success follows action. So learn something, learn a lot of things today, but make sure you put something into action. We'll talk about that at the very end. Want to give you a very quick update. Diligence capital investment. I mentioned it in my interview on the podcast a couple of episodes ago. I just want to give you a quick update on it. Basically what that is a group of us have put together an opportunity for people who want to invest passively in laundromats to pool our money and buy some laundromats together. And just wanted to let you know that this thing is already trucking. And if you're interested in checking that out a little bit more, check out diligencecapitalinvestments.com. The link will be in the show notes at laundromatresource.com/show 43. Or if you're on YouTube, it's down below. So check that out if that's something that's interesting to you. And without further ado, let's jump into our quick 1-minute marketing tip before we jump into it with Andrew Cunningham, the human laundromat encyclopedia.
Hey, what's up, guys? John here with your 1-minute marketing tip of the week. And your tip today is simply this. Your brand is your opportunity to shape the way your community thinks about you. And I want you to ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1, what do you want your community to think of you? And 2, how do you want your community to feel about you? If you run everything you do through those questions, you're going to help yourself build a very strong brand. For instance, when you're going to train your employees, ask these questions before you train them. If you're going to pick color schemes of your stores and paint, ask yourself these questions. If you're building a new logo or a website, ask yourself these questions and you will build a brand that is strong and trustworthy and people will keep coming back to. If you need any help building a strong brand, let Jordan and I know at laundromatresource.com/get-online.
Andrew, I am super excited to have you here. Thanks for coming on the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, it's my pleasure, my honor. We've talked a little bit on the phone here and there. It's good to see you face to face here, well, on Zoom at least, and get to chat laundromats with you. And I know that we're going to have a lot of ground to cover, and I can't wait to hear all this experience you have in this industry and the wisdom you've compiled and your perspectives on things. I'm very intrigued by them. But before we get into all of that, which we will get into all that, and I just got to say, hey, you know what? Buckle in, because I know we're going to be on a ride. So if you're listening to this, get the notepad out because you're going to want to take notes. But before we get there, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and who you are, and then we'll talk about how you got into this business.
Well, I'm one of 13, number 6.
Wow.
And born and raised California, primarily Fullerton in here, local high school, the whole 9 yards. Spent 5 years in Aspen right out of high school. That was my college degree. Nice. And moved in with my brother in San Francisco and went into business and then moved back down here. My younger brother was working for a company called MPE. And that turned out to be Morton Pollock Enterprises. And he sold washers and dryers. There was a division. But there was a PWS, which is Pollock, Wickham, and Steinberg. And he was working for them when he was driving a Corvette. Now he's 21 and I'm 26. And I'm looking at my younger brother going, I don't get it. I think I could be driving that Corvette, not him. So I interviewed with Mort, and he hired me. And I didn't have a broker's license or even a salesman's license at the time. So I went to work surveying laundromats for 6 months for PWS. You can learn a lot by surveying a laundromat even before you get into business. What
do you mean by surveying the laundromat? Can you tell us what you mean? What were you doing?
Well, you would drive up to a laundromat and you'd count the parking spaces and you'd look at where it was located in line, or was it on a corner? Did it have a signal? Was there a crosswalk? Which are important aspects of what we do. Where the competition was, where the people were coming from, crossing the street, same side of the street. And then you'd go into the laundromat and you'd rate how it looked, what it looked like, copy the equipment down, ages, make an estimate of the age of the equipment. At the time, a lot of them left the serial numbers available and you could look at them. Now they take them off so no one knows, just, and then you'd write the vend price down and then you'd turn a report in. And that was pretty much what you did. You got to know it, and you left a business card for the laundry owner to see if they wanted to sell or they needed new equipment. And that was pretty much your job. So
awesome.
after I did that, I finally got my real estate license and I went to work selling laundromats from 85 to 90. And then in 1990, my brother Bill was working for PWS at the time, and he was the number one salesman selling new stores. And I eventually became number one salesman for existing stores, Brokerage. And then we both left in 90 and created Cunningham Investments. And we had he bought a condominium right on the beach in Redondo Beach, and we overlooked the ocean while we did our daily business.
Yeah.
And
rough start, man. That
lasted for about 3 years when we got frustrated with the fact that we weren't making as much as we could or should. I mean, I left PWS making great money, and then for 2 years, it was starting a new business. It was really difficult. We came up with an idea to launch a chain called Lucy's, Lucy's Laundry Mart. And we did our first store in Inglewood, and I believe in late 94, early 95. Freestanding laundromat, and about 5,000 square feet. And
big. Especially
big at the time. 12, 14 parking spaces. And that turned out really well. And we did private investors, and, probably 8 to 10 people that invested. Mm-hmm. And we were operating the store, and we were filling up the drink and the snack machine almost daily. It was getting depleted that much. So we came up with a concept that we actually had 4,000 square foot of laundromat, and we had a bowling alley next to us, which was just a long and narrow strip that we needed to separate the building in 2 parcels, because the county said if you have one single purpose building, your sewer fees would be $200,000. If you have 2 tenants, it would only be $100,000. So we said, okay, we'll make 2 tenancies, A and B, which B was just nothing more than a large storage locker.
Right.
So after filling up the drink and snack machines for as much as we did, we decided to open up a convenience store inside the market, inside the laundromat. And you're talking about 10, 12, 14 hours a day on an Excel spreadsheet. How many candy bars am I going to sell? How many chips are we going to sell? How much sodas are we going to sell? So it was bath by fire on the laundromat side as well as the convenience store side.
Yeah. And
we got that market up and going. And within 6 months, it was doing about 30,000. We were out selling the local markets in milk. That's how much we were doing. And then we did Third and Normandy. And then we did Figaro and Colden, and both very good, successful stories. And then we went out and raised venture capital to the tune of about $30 million. First time ever to do co-branding, which was the laundromat and convenience store. But Starbucks liked the idea, so Starbucks came on board. And Wells Fargo liked the idea, so Wells Fargo came on board. And now we had a laundromat and convenience store, a Wells Fargo bank, and a Starbucks under one roof. Jeez. So co-branding started to get born in Southern California. Not sure about the East Coast, because I'm sure there were some people doing some things, but I wasn't aware of it because I was buried in what we were doing.
Right. Yeah.
And then we raised, like I said, $30 million in venture capital, and they launched the chain, and they got it up to 27 stores. And then I left the company, and Bill stayed on. And then eventually PWS bought the chain and sold the complete chain off. And the rest is history. I mean, it was a nice venture, and we got to do some things, and it kind of showed that you could have a market or a convenience store inside of a laundromat, and they could complement each other.
Yeah.
I can tell you that at both Third and Normandy, which did $60,000 a month in wash and dry, and Inglewood, which did about 30, we did about 25% in soap. So in Inglewood, we did $7,000 a month in soap sales, and in Third and Normandy, we did close to $15,000 a month in soap sales. So it was a fit. It made sense.
Yeah, huge.
And yeah, huge sense. And then Bill went on to do a developer, real estate developer, and I stayed in the business. I left for about 7 years, and then I came back, and I'm back in the saddle again now, and working my magic, doing brokerage and consulting and operational aspects, which is really where my strength is. I like to help people out and show them how to make more money once they get a laundromat.
Well, hey, that's why you're on the show right now, man. I love it. Well, I mean, that's a crazy story though, man. A wild, wild ride. And I know that, you probably got into PWS right at the right time, because I know they were booming. We had Donna and David Stark on the show.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, early on. And they came on and they talked about how they were cranking out laundromats like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And they were just
Donna was the executive secretary for all three of them. Mort, it was Mort's office, John Wickham's office, Bernie Steinberg's office, and Mort Pollack's office. And Donna sat in the front. So if you wanted to speak to either three of them, you had to go through Donna.
She's the gatekeeper. Yeah, you're not going through her easy.
Oh, it was not easy. Trust me.
She's a powerhouse. I love those guys.
And David was doing the construction.
Yeah, he said he thinks he probably built around 800 laundromats. And
it wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me.
And speaking of which, if you're listening to this right now, I'm going to link to their podcast episodes, because they did two. We did 2-parter with them, and it's an incredible story. So make sure you check those out if you haven't yet. Yeah. So I'll link them down in the show notes, or if you're on YouTube, I'll link them in the description down below. Check those out for sure. Awesome stuff. They know their stuff too. Anyways, small laundromat world, but you got in right at a booming time.
And I got trained by some really, really good people. I mean, there was a certain method to the madness and how they did it. We had a salesman there named John Marks, and John was probably 15 years older than I was. So I'm in my, it's 85, that's 10 years. I'm 28. John's probably 38, 40. And he probably at any given time had 2 or 3 laundromats in Escrow, always, brokerage, always. And we had a nice staff. We had probably a staff of 15 sales. Mm-hmm. And they were cranking them out, and they were cranking out new stores left and right under the Laundroland. And Bernie did the leases, John did the financing, and Mort did the rest. So it was a nice marriage, and it was a good job, good people, and you learned a lot. And I think some of that's missing today. I think that as you and I spoke about the other day, I think that there's a handful of brokers out there that take a keen interest in their clients' well-being going forward. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people, a lot of brokers and salespeople, they'll sell a laundromat and they'll basically be gone the next day, and that new owner will end up talking to people at parts departments and talking to other owners as they meet at the parts departments to figure out all their problems, when a broker, the person who sold the deal, should be stepping in and showing them how to run it, how to operate it from that perspective. And then you get people doing the same thing over and over again, and it grows.
Yeah. You know what I call that is when somebody is, because we have these brokers, right, who will sell these laundromats, especially here in Southern California. I think it happens everywhere. They'll sell the laundromats to, a first-time buyer, don't really give them any help, kind of oversell it. The buyer gets in, they realize it's not really what they thought it was going to be. It's actually going to take a little bit of work, and it's not just collecting quarters and that's it. And so after a year or so, they decide they want out because it's not what they thought it was. So they take it back to the broker, and the broker sells it over again, and they keep doing that cycle. And I call that the laundry mill. Like there's brokers making their living doing that. It's a big part of the reason. I mean, I got sucked into that when I first got into business, and it was a rough go for me. But it's a big part of the reason why I do what I'm doing now is because that's not a good sustainable business model, where you're going to be helping people out. It makes a lot of sense to help people succeed in their business because, just strictly business sense, if you can help somebody else grow their business, they're going to help you grow your business. So as a broker, you should be, helping your clients succeed because they're going to help you succeed. They're going to bring you with them. Right.
Yeah. It's important that, one of the first, there's a lot of things that I tell these folks when they get into the business, and it's from operational aspects too. I say the first day you own a laundromat is the first day you're preparing to sell it. And I say that because it's important that you keep good books and records as you go forward, so that truthfully, when a seller talks to an agent and says, I'm ready to sell my laundromat, or I'm thinking about selling it, what value is there? That owner should just hand him the books. And it basically is, here's what I grossed for the last year, 2 years. Here's my profit and loss statement. And then you go through all the expenses and you make sure that the expenses are properly represented as you look at it. And I find today that they don't do it. And so most owners scramble when you talk with them and you say, well, what's your profit and loss statement? And I mean, right now they say, well, can we exclude 2020 for COVID? And I go, no, you can't exclude that. That's part of the value. That's part of what you did. I mean, good or bad, that's what it is. But you find out that the profit and loss statements are not properly represented. And it causes problems because they bought it under a certain premise, and now they're trying to sell it for the same premise, and it doesn't work that way. And so you find out that, the profit and loss statements aren't what they should be. And had they been trained in the beginning, the proper way to collect this data, they would be handing you a book saying, here, what's my value? And so that's missing today.
And it also makes a lot of sense in terms of value. I mean, your business is a lot more valuable if a buyer is able to finance it, right? That's why housing prices have continued to go up, right? Because there's access to easy financing for housing prices. So instead of having to come up with $100,000 to buy a house, you can come up with, like $3,500, with a loan, a down payment for $100,000 house or whatever, or $20,000, whatever the leverage is, right? And so when you can get your laundromat financed from with having a loan, which you can do which a buyer can do if you have good records, good solid records, it's going to make your laundromat more valuable just by having those records. Yeah. So it's important that you actually start to compile your records, and you actually get to teach the owner what people will be looking for, like they were looking for. Again, that goes back to you working with the broker that you're working with. And the other thing is, when you look at someone's profit and loss statement for the first time and you go over it, and then you as an owner have questions, and I always have questions. And there isn't a question I can't, don't have. But when you try to get the information, or you can't get the information, or it's not prevalent, you sow seeds of distrust. So if it's not the insurance isn't the correct stated amount, then you look at the labor and it's not the correct stated amount, you start to sow seeds of doubt with this buyer that what else are they not showing you? And what haven't you been able to determine is correct or incorrect? And now you have a breakdown of that fabric of having a good sale and having the buyer be comfortable with what they're getting. And so you as a broker have got to build that portion up. And then it goes into the operational aspects of a laundromat. And you have 3, correct? 2. Yeah. 2 right now.
Yeah. And you've been at it for 10 years?
7.
So a lot of yours has been, oh my God, look what happened today. I mean,
oh my gosh. Yeah. Especially early on, but yeah.
And there's some horror stories, I'm sure, that you just go, I can't believe this.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, things Things don't surprise me so much anymore, but that's only because I've been desensitized to the surprising things.
Yeah, it's when you get to the inner workings of a laundromat, and you start to look at, and let me give you an example. I think that one of the biggest failures of most laundromat owners today is they don't have enough laundry carts. And they'll tell you, well, they steal them. And I say, okay, so you are a small 5 and dime, or you're a small hardware store in rural America, and you know most of your customers, they come in and they all write checks to you. And guess what? A couple of checks bounce every month or every year. That's the cost of doing business. It's what it is. And I cite an example that basically says, I talked to an old timer named Vic Rosen in LA, and this was in the 80s. And Vic probably had, 10 or 15 laundromats in the Valley. And I remember having a conversation with him, and I said, what's a good number for laundry carts? And he went on to tell me a story about having a barbecue on a Saturday afternoon with all your family and friends, and you go to the grocery store and you're with, your kids, and you're going to go grocery shopping for the barbecue, and you go up to the front door of the supermarket and there's no shopping carts. His question is, are you going to go back to that grocery store to do your groceries? And the answer is no. I can't put my groceries in a basket. Why would I want to shop there? And the same thing goes for a laundromat. Most customers come in and they grab that laundry cart, and they don't let go of that laundry cart until they are finished.
Yep.
The kids play in it, the kids sleep in it, the baby sleep in it. I mean, they own it. And then people say, well, what's the right number? And I remember telling this story in Florida after giving a seminar for the CLA. And I told them that it was 10 laundry carts per 1,000 square feet. And then I went onto the floor of the seminar, and Rick Rollins, R&B Wire, pulls me aside and says, what did you do? And I go, what do you mean, what'd you do? And he goes, people are lining up here asking if your statement's true. And I go, well, I heard it from Vic Rosen a long time ago, so I'm going to assume it's true. It's just, there's never enough. And so he brought it down to 7 to 10 carts per 1,000, but it's still a true statement. If you have a 3,000 square foot laundry, you should have 25 laundry carts. Mm-hmm. And people say, where are you going to put them? I said, put them down the aisle. They'll pick them up and they'll take them wherever they're going to go. But no one will be without a laundry cart. And that's really an important part of the operational aspects of a laundry. If you take a look at a laundromat like a casino, and you have slots, and you have poker, and you've got blackjack, and you've got roulette, you've got top loaders, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 80s, 1200s. They're all different vending areas. And the question is, once you have them, how do you move them in and out of your laundry to get the most productivity out of your laundromat? And that includes keeping them in repair. And that, jumps into another whole area of when to buy and why to buy. And, but if you look at it that way, you just want to move that client in your laundry. And so if you've got more of others and less of some, or whatever the case may be, and you have a traffic jam, then you're going to want to look at how do you address that traffic jam. So you walk into your laundromat and you say, your 40 pounders, you got 7 of them, as an example, and they're constantly busy. People are waiting for them. Well, are your 30s not in repair, or are they priced right? Are your 60s, the machine above, priced right? Maybe it's time for you to jack up the price in the 40s and force them back into 30s and force them into the 60s, so you alleviate the traffic jam so people can get in and out of the laundromat, which is the key, as quickly as possible, so you can do higher volumes. Mm-hmm. And that goes to the next statement. That goes to what's the max? And people toy with it. And every laundromat has a glass ceiling. Every laundromat will hit a numerical number that is the maximum that they can do in that store. Mm-hmm. And that's based on where you are, how much parking you have, who do you share the parking with, nail salons, restaurants, liquor stores. I mean, it all depends on what it is. And then it's the equipment mix and what you have inside. But every laundromat has a glass ceiling. You can only fit so many people in a laundromat at any given time. And that's the max you can do. So when you start to talk about, I'm doing 4.5 turns per day, I kind of shrug my shoulders and say, that's nice. I mean, that's an okay number. And people will tell you, well, if the industry average is 4, it's 5 or 6. I'm doing great. And I go, okay, well, divide 6 into how many hours you are in business. 8's 50%. So I only have 50% usage if I'm doing 8 turns a day if your average cycle is an hour. And I've had conversations with equipment guys, and they want to argue, all the different features that you have on the machines today. And I say, but the bottom line is this: for easy math, it's an hour per cycle. 7.5 to load, 7.5 to unload and put it in the dryers. 45-minute cycle, plus or minus. We're talking about numbers that you can look at, that you can say, here's the goal that I want to get to in my store. Mm-hmm. So now you say, can I do 7 turns a day? Can I do 6 turns a day? And the question is, you might be able to. Depends on all the variables that I just spoke about on, do I have enough to get them in the store? And how do I keep them there? And you keep them there by giving them a clean, safe, well-lit place to do their laundry. And it's a female-driven business. And so you have to cater to them. Now, when I talk to the people in LA, in the Hispanic neighborhoods, I always tell them to put convex mirrors in the corners of their laundromat. And they go, why? Because the Hispanic women are short enough, they won't see over the 80-pounder, and they don't know, 1, where their kids are, and 2, who's around here, and they want to feel safe. But if they can look up and see a mirror, now they get to see the whole store and what's going on, and there's a little bit less anxiety and more comfort that it's okay in the store.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I like that. Well, go ahead. I'm curious. I mean, okay, so you've intrigued me, right? So you said, hey, 4.5 turns. Yeah, fine, whatever.
Right.
But, really you could be doing a lot more than that, right? Potentially, provided the other factors, your equipment mix, your parking, all that stuff kind of lines up, right? So let's say a laundromat is underperforming their potential turns per day. What can someone do to help them reach that potential of their laundromat? Well,
one of the first things that I'd sit down with them and say, well, who are your competition and where are they and what are they doing? And so I'll do a grid that I'll take, depending upon where you are. If you're in rural America, you're going to go probably 3 to 5 miles out. If you're in downtown LA, you're going to go 0.5 mile out. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just the density of population. And I drive in 4 different directions and I survey all the competition. And then I do a spreadsheet that shows how many top loaders, how many, and what price, and then how many front loaders there are and the different sizes there are. So I can see, one, if there's a hole. In other words, is the area vacant 40-pounders or 60-pounders, or is that the least amount that they have? So that I can probably assess what's going on in the neighborhood and what they need. And then I'll also look at your vend prices. And for me, I like to maintain $1 per size in between each machine. So if you've got a top loader and you're at $2 and you have a 20-pounder, I'm sorry, I'd be at $3. Mm-hmm. Or I'd be at least $2.75. And then the next machine would be $3.75. The next machine would be $4.75. And I would go all the way up to try to maintain that dollar. Because what will happen is when they come into your laundromat, you're going to see where they believe is the best value for them. They're not dumb. They're just a little bit poor. Mm-hmm. But they know where value is. And so they're going to go where they think is the best value for them in that laundromat. And that's where you get your log jam. And you look at that and you go, oh my God, those are doing 7 turns a day on those machines. But the machines below them are only at 5 or 4. And the machines above them are only at 3 and 2. I want to force them in the other machines so I can actually get people in and out of my laundromat quicker if they're all waiting for those. So you raise it a quarter. Well, sometimes people go, I'll still pay the extra quarter because I still see the value. Well, you just made more money. Mm-hmm. If they go to this machine above, you made more money. If you go to the machine below, you alleviated traffic. So you don't really lose. You just are moving them in your laundry to create more flow. So you talked about maximums. If you took a 2,000 square foot laundromat or a 3,000 square foot laundromat, and you figure that the average family comes in to your laundromat, and it's probably it's probably at least two people for the most. If you're in a college town and what have not, it's usually one or two guys or gals because they're doing a buddy system to do the laundry. But if you have a family, it's probably 2 to 3 people. Well, you take a 3,000 square foot store and you start to put in these different families and quads, and you probably can only get 20, 25 people in that 3,000 square feet. And that's your limit. That's your cap. And they're going to be there for hour and a half, 2 hours, depending upon their size. So you've already now there's your ceiling. So now the question is, how are they effective inside your laundry? Do I have enough folding? Do I have enough dryers? So each one of those areas, once you get out of the top loaders or front loaders, is it, where do they go? Do you have enough folding? Is it 2-tiered folding? Are they using benches for folding? Are they using the wash machines for folding? In which I've seen they do. And then the dryers. Do you have enough capacity to do the drying for what they need in my store? And there's a threshold. I think you could probably be maybe 10% more poundage in your washers than you do your dryers, and after that, you're in trouble. And I'm against putting machines in walls. Now, remember, I'm only Southern California. I'm not East Coast, because I know that they have bowling alleys and they've got dryers on one side and washers on the other side. I got that. Right. But for the most part, when you're building a square laundry box, dryers can only go against walls. And so I do my best to avoid putting machines against the walls, because I want that saved for dryers. And I don't have them now. I will have them eventually. So I'm planning ahead. And then from an operational standpoint, what can I do for these folks? Well, I don't think dryers ever can have enough makeup air. Dryers are tested in a gymnasium, and they get all the free oxygen they want. And then we force them behind a wall that's 3 feet wide. You could barely get your shoulders down for a repairman to get in there to do the repairs. And they're starving for air. And so you look at, some people are lucky. They get to put holes in the walls and they get to draw fresh air from the outside right behind the dryers, and everybody's happy. But in the reality of it is, that's really not how it works. In fact, it actually, it goes against the grain a lot of times when you talk about engineering a laundry with dryers. And the tip for the day is that I think that if you improve the makeup air to the back of your dryers, you probably can save 5 to 10% of your gas bill. Now, I know that's a lot. People go, oh my God, I'm spending $1,500 a month in gas. But the truth is, they're just starving for air. And currently, if you don't have an access to the outside from the walls behind your dryers, you're drawing your makeup and combustion air from above the T-bar ceiling. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes from the laundry itself, where your tenants are, where all your customers are. And my recommendation is that you buy 3 or 4 bathroom exhaust fans, and you put them above all the doors that go into behind the dryers that you have access for repairs, and you put them on a timer, and they just come on. And what they're basically doing is just sucking air from the inside of the laundry into the back of the dryer, so they don't work so hard to breathe. And that starts to feed them with the air that they need, because you have combustion air and up outside, and you have makeup air the other way around. You have makeup air above it, and you have combustion air behind it, and they just circulate. So you take in the makeup air now becomes combustion air, and the combustion air now is burned, and it burns and it throws up. Are you ready for this one? This is a killer. It throws up lint and stepped on oxygen. So the oxygen is 98.5%. And when it comes out of that nice, beautiful candy cane that gets dumped on your roof, it's around 92. But the killer is they have the relief vents on your roof right next to those candy canes. And that stepped on oxygen and that lint gets sucked right back into the laundromat.
Yeah.
And now you have poor circulation, stepped on oxygen, and lint covering your laundromat. Not only is it covering the laundromat on the T-bar ceiling and in behind the dryers, it's also now dusting your entire laundromat on the inside. And what has to happen is you have to be able to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a huge, lint is just a big problem. I think it's a big problem why, I get asked all the time why we don't use water recyclers so much, or water, purification systems to recycle the water, like car washes, and lint is just a huge problem. I think lint is probably the biggest reason that we don't do that. It makes it not cost effective to do that for most laundromats. And maybe they'll solve that problem. Maybe they're working on it, but
I'm working on solving that problem right now. I have something that's and we'll do another podcast, but I have got something else here that might be able to mitigate that lint situation. But you mentioned water recycling. And so when I was in charge of operations for Lucy's, we had to, there is a store at 8th and Bonnie Bray. And it was a combination of Lucy's, and it turned into a Wells Fargo kiosk and a Burger King. And Burger King liked our format because in our format, it only cost them about $300,000 to put a Burger King in that application versus $1 million if it was a freestanding one. I mean, they really liked it. There was an apartment building just to the east of us, and I'm talking about 15 feet off the property line. And the laundromat was up against the property line. So basically you had 15 feet, and now you have all the apartment windows of all the tenants, okay? And we had a lint problem. And it was dumping all that lint on the roof and then getting sucked into these. So we had to put a lint collection system on the laundromat to the tune of about $150,000. And literally big, huge bags of lint got collected. I think it's still there. But you mentioned the water purifier. Well, they wanted us to put a clarifier, which is the big box at the bottom in the front of your laundry that collects all the lint. Well, we tried to do recycling, and it was at $250,000. And it's like, it doesn't justify the cost of what you were talking about to get water purification. And then the county, the health department says that you have to have so many parts per billion out 9 logs. So it goes 0.0000 out 9, and 8 is what they dump in the ocean, and 9 is what you get to drink. Okay. Laundromats are probably somewhere around 0.00 unk, and it's a 3 or a 4, and you can't touch it. That's why they would like you to have, some laundromats are now required to have clarifiers. Not a lot of them, but probably, 25% of the laundromats in LA now have clarifiers. It's to collect all that stuff that gets dumped into the sewer system, and they have a hard time cleaning out the sludge. So it's not cost effective for water purification for 2 reasons. One is to do it the correct way, the cost of the installation of it. And plus, it's hard to get that water purified to that level that the health department will allow you to recycle it or use it. The other thing is whether or not it would be an open system or a closed system. A closed system meaning that if it broke down, you would be without water. Whereas an open system, you'd be able to funnel in fresh water to compensate for it while the other part was broken down and you got it fixed. And so the cost to put those two together was becoming cost ineffective. So it's always been that way. You look at it and you go, too much money to spend for it. Doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So now, if you were the only laundromat in town and you were doing a couple $100,000, well, you would probably want to spend the money.
Right. Yeah.
So,
well, hey, I would love to change gears slightly here.
Go ahead.
I do a lot of consulting and stuff, but I get a lot of calls from struggling laundromat owners and, whose, business just isn't doing well. Maybe they're even losing money. And I'm curious. I mean, you have so much experience, so much knowledge. What would you say to somebody whose laundromat is losing money every single month and they don't know what to do? They don't know where to turn.
I would probably start back at the basics. I'd go back and survey my competition, and I'd look at how I fared to my competition with regards to cleanliness, newness. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do in a laundromat that's not going to cost you a lot of money. You can paint, you can keep it cleaner. And so I would probably look at where have I failed? Some things you have some barriers. Number one is if you're paying too much rent, there really is no fix for that. And I think the golden rule, or I should say the litmus test is 4 times your rent is what you should be doing in volume and nothing less.
So your rent should be 25%, basically.
Yeah, and if you're at 30 or 35%, your landlord's your silent partner, and it's just going up rapidly. And the way to combat that is, and this is a comment to all laundry owners. This isn't just the ones that are struggling. If McDonald's or any of the major corporations needed to raise prices, they don't check with anybody. They just raise the prices. I mean, I can't tell you that, I go to a Starbucks and I get a short and it's $2.15, but down the street it's $2.35 and over here it's $2.50. And everybody has different pricing structures based on what their rent is. I mean, it's what their expenses are and what's the ratio to there. So as an owner operator, you want to try to stay ahead of the curve. And the only way to stay ahead of the curve is how can I raise my vend prices? And what are you offering your clients when you do raise your vend prices? You don't need new equipment to do that. You need to offer a clean, safe place that they can do their wash in a relatively quick amount of time. And you should have a game plan that every year you're raising one of your machines. You need to keep that hedge off of that rent, because if that rent gets up in the 30s and 40s, you are going to have a hard time staying open, and you're going to have a hard time selling it. And you may end up with that laundromat for a long time because rent is too high. And so the next question is, what do I need to do to make it back down to the percentages? And you have to go survey your competition and see what your competition is doing. And then you need to cut your costs, like I mentioned on the makeup air, and you need to look at, do I have any gas hogs? Is it time to replace my equipment? And we should jump on that and talk about it. Equipment has 2 lives: economic life and physical life. And the physical life will always outstrip the economic life.
What do you mean by that? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. With enough baling wire and spit, you can pretty much keep a washer or a dryer going forever. But the problem is, in doing that, is that you have a couple of factors that work against you. One is your repairman's getting wealthy. Okay. You have customer dissatisfaction because they don't trust your equipment's going to work when they go in there. So they may be leaving you for another laundromat because they don't trust the reliability of your equipment. Mm-hmm. Okay. You may not be giving refunds on a regular basis or getting it back to them quick enough. And that now you've further damaged your relationship, or your relationship with your client took a hit. And so the physical life will be there. The economic life is that when it gets to a point where the cost of new equipment is equal to the cost of repair, replace the equipment. And now comes the big test. The big test is, what are you going to replace it with? Now, I'm not particularly talking about the brand. I'm talking about, if you surveyed your competition and you know what your turns per day are, you're going to change the mix of your laundromat based on what your client's needs are. And you may no longer have 15 or 20 top loaders. You may have 5. And you may go from 12 30-pounders to 20 30-pounders based on competition, based on what your client's needs are, based on your turns per day. But the goal here is to make sure that at what point in time do I change my equipment out? It's where the costs along with the lost revenue, costs, you can replace it for the cost of new equipment. And that's when you replace your new equipment. That's not talking about any of the depreciation or any other benefits you get from replacing equipment. Mm-hmm. So replacing equipment isn't just, oh my gosh, I got to replace the equipment. It's a thoughtful process that says, what's going on? How much am I spending every month for repairs? How much am I spending every month for labor? And then what will be the cost of new equipment if I replaced it? And then what do I replace it with based on this statistics and based on this data?
I love that because I think a lot, I mean, people ask me all the time, right? Like, how do I know when to replace equipment? And I like this kind of systematic approach because we're told all the time, like, you know, replace equipment after a certain number of years, or your equipment's just looking aging, so replace it. But I love what you're saying because this gives us numbers, right? It gives us a hard, like, definite, here's when you need to replace them. And you only need to replace them when it makes sense economically to replace them.
Right. Numbers don't lie, people do. Numbers are solid. You can look at them and you can go, oh my gosh, I didn't know. It always gives me great pleasure when you talk to somebody who really hasn't studied turns per day. And, you know, I have a form that I give them in Excel that's really easy. And, you know, people, well, we'll talk about a card and coin, but I'm going to talk about coin because that's really what I do. They basically weigh it and then they just give you the amount. And I have a form that actually takes the amount and converts it to dollars and divide by the machines, divide by the number of days, divide by the event price, and there's your turns per day. Mm-hmm. And so they get kind of giddy when they finally get to see that. They go, oh, I never knew that. And you go, oh, and how long have you had the laundromat? Oh, about 2 years. And they go, oh, and who'd you buy it from? I mean, so yeah, it's like, here's your package. This is what you should have been handed or should have been discussed when you originally bought it. I want the call. Do you think I should be doing 40s or 50s or 40s or 60s? And you go, okay, well, what do you need? Let me see what your action is. What's your competition? Is there a hole? I remember doing a store in out in the Riverside area, and we did a survey of the area, and I found that when we did the survey, the area was void of 60 pounders. I mean, basically, out of 4 laundromats, there was 8 60 pounders. And I looked at the client and I said, you know, I'd put 5 or 6, 8 60 pounders in this store because the neighborhood doesn't have them. And it turned out to be a big benefit for them because they're doing more volume than they did before. And it's because of those 60 pounders. But we wouldn't have known that had we not surveyed the area and looked at whether or not there's a hole in the neighborhood. Plus, it gives you the chance to go and see what your competitors are doing and why they're doing what they're doing. And the other thing is, and I'm just jumping around here, it just came into my head. Someone says, should I buy that laundry? And I'm hesitant to tell them to buy the laundry. And I'm hesitant because it's not my decision. It's your decision. I've given you everything that I possibly can. However, I'll take another one for you. If you can't go to that laundromat at Friday night at 10 o'clock, get out of the car, walk into the laundromat and feel comfortable, don't buy it. Just don't buy it.
That advice would have saved me a ton of heartache in my first
because I can tell you, I've had some interesting situations in the laundries that, like Figaro and Colden, which is Figaro and Century, approximately. And this is back in the 80s. But there have been some scary moments that you just look at it and you go, is this worth it? And it was part of the chain, and it was okay, but you still. So when I talk with people, they I want to buy a laundry. I'm going to do this and this and that, and then they're all excited and they go look at it. Well, we like it. What's the next step? And I says the next step is I want you to go Friday and Saturday night, and I want you to get out of the car and walk around that parking lot. And if you can do that and you feel comfortable, then we can go to the next stage. If you can't, then we'll find you another laundromat.
Yeah. And I was interviewed on my own podcast by a former guest, and we were talking about that. And, Peter Mayberry was the guy who was interviewing me, and he said, hey, it's just important for people to know not every laundromat is for everyone. Not everyone can do any laundromat, right? There are areas. So unless you're a vigilante laundromat owner who wants to come clean up the neighborhood, there
are them.
Which I ended up being an unwilling and unwitting, guy who had to come in and clean up this laundromat because I got sold into frankly, a dangerous situation. Right. And there are those laundromats out there. So you do need to be careful, and I think that's amazing advice, especially for, someone who is not used to that, like a rougher neighborhood, or, it's easy, for somebody who lives here in Orange County to want to go buy a laundromat in South LA. But if you're not used to, making that transition from those two different cultures, because they're very different cultures, that can be a rude awakening. It can be very difficult for someone to do. It
is. In fact, interesting you should say that. I tell people that you want your laundromat within a half an hour of where you work or play. Because what's going to invariably happen is it's going to be a Saturday afternoon and you have a whole house full of guests post-COVID. Mm-hmm. And you're having a grand old time and you get that phone call saying, there's a problem with the laundromat. There's a flood. Now, we're going to go back to, we'll talk about employees. So you go, honey, I got to go. Well, your laundromat's an hour away. So now you already lost 2 hours from this dinner party. And depending on how long it takes you to resolve the problem that you have, you're gone for at least 3 hours from 4 o'clock. Now you're back at 7 o'clock. Half your guests are gone. So I tell people, if you can, get a laundromat that's within 30 minutes of where you work or play. The other thing is, and I'm going to jump back. We're going to jump back to employees. When a laundromat owner takes over a store for the first time, they don't have a clue. And I can't tell you how many people I've taught how to use a broom correctly. And, not kidding you.
I believe it. And probably would have to teach me.
And so what I do, and there's a couple of things that I do as a broker that one is I get everybody involved in what they're doing. And I hand them a kind of a booklet that basically says, here's an overview of what you should know. And here's an overview of what you should provide. And one of them is an hourly, a daily, a weekly, a bi-monthly, a monthly, a quarterly, and semi-annually, and an annual list of responsibilities for the employee, for the attendant, what they need to do. And then you also have to teach them. And nobody takes the time to teach their employees. They have a thought process that says they know how to use a broom or they know how to clean up, but what constitutes an emergency? And what do you do during this? And how do I shut off this? Or another good tip for laundry owners. If you have a situation where you get brownouts or you get power outages, I instruct the employees to turn off every breaker in the panel except for the lights. And the reason is because when that power comes back on, it could be a huge surge, more than you normally take, and it'll fry computer boards. And unless you have a device on your panel called an demon, which is the real name, it'll stop the surge and only deliver the correct amount of power. You're going to fry computer boards. When the lights come back on, the employee can go back in and turn all the breakers back on and all the machines are back on. But if you don't, this happened a lot in LA, the dryers just got fried. The computer boards got fried. Well, it's $110 at the time to replace 20 computer boards. Mm-hmm. And it was like, why didn't somebody tell me this? Well, we didn't know it until now. But so it points to your employees are your first line of defense. And it's very important that you give them the right tools. And that includes training them on what constitutes an emergency, what to do in an emergency, what their responsibilities are. I mean, if there's a fire, get everybody out, do all these steps, and everybody has a step to follow. And I think that if most owners would begin to start to take that approach, I think you'd start to see volumes go up. And I think people would be sticking around a lot longer because they have well-informed, educated employees that are doing exactly what they should do given the situation.
That's awesome. Awesome advice because, I think, a lot of laundromat owners, I think it's starting to change a little bit less mom and poppy. There's still, I still say it's probably a majority mom and pop laundromat owners,
right?
But there's more and more that are multi-store owners that are starting to put it together, these systems and these trainings for employees. But I think a lot of mom and pop owners aren't really thinking about that. They're just thinking, hey, I'm going to hire somebody to come clean, and, resolve minor issues that customers have, which is fine. But when you start to think about it more like a business, which is what you're saying, basically, like think about it as if it's a business, because it is a business, right? Instead of a cash machine, which is how I think a lot of owners, especially first-time owners who get into the business, who are sold that by brokers or distributors or whoever, to see it as a cash machine. But you need to shift that mindset a little bit. And I love what you're saying about training these employees. But I think it's something that stereotypically we're not good at as laundromat owners, training employees, even knowing what to train employees. And I don't think there's a ton of resources out there for that right now. There's some, I think, but not a ton.
Right. It's a part of the industry that needs to be analyzed, and what's the best way to approach it? Just like the lint situation. So this industry has a couple little interesting quirks that need to be looked at a little bit deeper. I personally have a guy that worked for me at Lucy's, and I've been known to have him take my clients on a Saturday and grab all the employees and spend 2 hours with them and show them how to do the basics so that the employees understand it. The other thing, another reason why you do this is that, you need some kind of manual if you have employees. And in the old days, people were paid under the table and nobody really cared about the employee. They were dispensable until government got involved and said, there's no more independent contractors. You're either an employee or you're not. And, I when I talk with people, I kind of chuckle sometimes and I go, I have a rule for you. If you supply them with a broom, they're an employee, period. So they show up with all their own stuff and they come in when they want, a different issue. They're an employee and you have to treat them like that. Well, you can't just get rid of your employees then. There has to be cause. So if you start out with a booklet that basically says, here's the rules and regulations as you as an employee show up on time, and you go through the whole list, and it'll take you a little to put it together, but it won't take you long to realize what your mistakes are, where your holes are. Within 6 months, you should have a pretty nice kind of contract for your employees that you modify all the time. And you just put that in there that you reserve the right to modify this contract anytime or this manual anytime. And you get them to acknowledge it and you put it in whatever their native language in so they can sign it. And then you can build a case on that. And the building the cases is just, late, didn't do this, this sheet wasn't done. And now you at least have some cause to be able to say, I can't use you anymore, I'm going to hire somebody else. Mm-hmm. And it's an insurance policy. The more you hold on to this and you make it like that business that you and I are talking about, it's interesting. They think, laundromat's no big deal. It's a fun thing. It's cash flow. Like you say, it's a business. And the tighter you run it, the more profitable you are going to be in the long run. And it goes with training and it goes through, the repair guy. Great story. And I tell this to everyone. Here's another pearl for you. Ready?
Ready.
The number 2 most important person besides your employees is your repair guy. Now, everyone in this industry can tell you, oh my gosh, do we have a repair problem? They don't show up on time. They don't have the parts with them. Ad nauseum. Well, I have news for you. It didn't start out that way. What happened is some people wouldn't pay the repair people on time, or would argue what their rates were, or would argue whether or not he actually spent the time on the machine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My attitude is this: that's your most important person in the operational aspect besides your employees, and take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
When they show up, give them half their money if you want in the beginning. When they show up and they give you a bid that's going to be 3 bearing jobs and it's $1,500, give them the $700 for the parts.
Mm-hmm.
On a Friday afternoon, when you're really busy and a machine breaks down, if you take care of your repair guy and you call them on the phone, they're going to drop what they're doing. They're going to come and see you because you pay them on time and there isn't a hassle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you build that rapport with your repair guy, and your business succeeds. You succeed. You don't have broken down equipment. You don't have pissed off customers because I've taken care of my repair guy. And that's the second most important person I have in this industry. And so I see it happen all the time. Where's Charlie? Well, he's not here. Why not? Well, he had other things to do. That doesn't make any sense in my book. Something's inherently wrong with a repair person who says they're going to be there doesn't show up. So one of the first things I tell my clients is make sure you take care of your repair guy and make sure that they're paid when they hand out the invoices and it's legit. I think that in our industry here in Southern California, we could use a boost in the number of repair people that are currently repairing equipment.
Holy cow, we can. I struggle. I'm always looking for repair people. I take care of my guys. I'll pay them cash. I'll pay them up front, like whatever it takes. And I cannot hang on to repair people. I've asked for recommendations and it's tough, man. Even with the distributors that have repair people that cost more money, I can't even get them to be consistent. It's crazy.
So we have a hole there.
Yeah.
So we have a hole in.
Somebody come be a top-notch repair. All you got to do.
No, I'm telling you.
All you got to do is be on time and do what you say, and you will have more business than you will know what to do with. You could create a whole business. Hire repair people, make sure they're on time, and have clear communication. If you can't be somewhere, just let you know. On that model. That's all you need to do. You don't even have to be that good at repairing, to be honest. You just have to be adequate, and be on time. Yeah.
And show up.
I know.
That is one of the things that this industry has suffered with. It's a problem. And now more than ever, and for all the folks out there want to get in the business and start a different company, there's also all the new systems. Now, I'll be honest with you. It has been a blind spot for me on all the technology because, and the reason is that it has developed and propelled itself exponentially in this industry that you have the debit card and the Easy Card system or whatever the system is. That it's taken this industry over and it's a flash. Now, who repairs those? So now you're channeled into whatever company that is, whatever software program they have, whether it's that company alone, or is there a repair person out here? Are they too busy? Do they have too many clients? So there's another area for someone that's savvy in computers, that understands softwares, to come in and have their own little slice of life here, because that's part of the industry and that stuff's breaking down. And whenever you have electronics, now, wireless is different, but a lot of it's hardwire to begin with in the back room. You still have lint and you still have moisture, and that always causes a problem. Mm-hmm. It's something we can't get away in a laundromat until we resolve the lint issue, which we'll get to at a different time. But that's the problem you have. So you have, not only do you have repair of the hard equipment of bearings and coin drops and mechanisms and hoses and belts and all the other things, you actually have the electronics of it and the software of it. And who can stop a machine and go through and do a software repair or hardware repair right there on notice? Or do you have to wait for the next day because it's past 5 o'clock New York time that you can't get a rep to do it? So there's another area that this industry at least in Southern California right now, could use a boost in. to get some money or get a company that basically says we can work on all those things.
Well, I tell you, I'm this close to quitting everything else I'm doing and starting my own repair company because I think I could probably make a lot more money doing that than anything else.
I'm with you.
I'll sell my laundromats and make a lot more money fixing machines. Holy cow, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Crazy. Well, real quick, I mean, we have a couple of segments I want to get to in a second, but real quick, you mentioned earlier, you want to talk coin versus card. And I'm just kind of curious on your take on that. I mean, you just touched on it briefly right there, but I'm just curious on your take.
I'm old school. I think that, I think there's a time and a place in the evolution of the card systems and what have not that it's beneficial for particularly multi-store owners because it improves. One is it takes away the possibility of theft from people handling money. Mm-hmm. Two, there's a accurate accounting of it. And you don't have to worry about it. I mean, I've seen some systems where basically they just show me, here's my bank statement. Here's what the bank deducted. Here's what I made yesterday. And then it goes further. And this is what my turns per day on each machine was. And not just the size of the machine as a general, but each machine doing the turns. And then you get in the conversations of, why are those machines doing more turns? Well, they're in the front or they're in the back or they're next to this or they're next to whole different. Again, that's that matrix that you get to play with once they're in the store like a casino. Mm-hmm. You're just moving them within the parts. But for coin and card, and then there's a hybrid, and I like the hybrid. And I just like coin. I've always heard that cash is king, and I kind of again, I'm old school on that. I don't mind taking a little bit of time to count quarters. It may be unsanitary now. It may require you to bleach your money. It may require you to wear gloves where you handle it. I mean, I've been known to actually wash money out of the changers and
is that
dry.
A euphemism for launder, or
no. Truthfully, put them in a washing machine and in a pillowcase. And put a rubber band on a pillowcase and wash the money and dry it in the dryer, and you actually have clean money. I mean, and it's it's like I can touch it and use it.
Right.
But for the
we're talking about actually washing, right? We're not talking about laundering money and having clean.
Yeah, I've actually.
I just want to be clear on that we're talking about physically putting it in a washing machine with some Tide or Ariel or something.
Bleach.
Yeah. Bleach.
Actually soaking it in bleach and just rinsing it and putting it in a pillowcase and drying it and having it come out crispy.
Nice.
And then you can get, but I've done it. Not anymore, but I have. But because money is dirty. I mean, it touches so many different hands and you have no idea where it's coming from. And I think a lot of people like the fact that you can wave your AE or your debit or your credit card in front of the thing and your machine's done, which I think, as we evolve, I think that's where it's going to end up in the long run. Yeah. Although I still do like coin because I think cash is king, and for all the variable reasons of that, I'm kind of more of a hybrid guy. Yeah. But to talk about that, you have to make sure that it works for you, and you have to make sure you have equipment that works for you. And that gets back to the repair part, which is vitally important. I want to do a little separation there. One of the interesting things that we talked about in the beginning, which was when you buy a laundromat, your first step is getting ready to sell it. One of the things that I've noticed in the industry today is that I'll look at the listing for sale, the laundry for sale, and I'll see the equipment is anywhere between 12 and 18 years old. And if you've maintained it and it looks good, again, you're trading dollars with a bank versus with your repair guy. Where's your money well spent in order for that equipment to work? But I find on the profit and loss statements, you'll see something like $350. And you'll go, I'm sorry, $350 for what? $350 for repair. And I'm like, no, that might be $350 for a week, might be $350 for the parts, but it's not $350 for the repair. And they go, well, the seller says he fixes his own equipment. Mm-hmm. And I kind of chuckle and I say, well, all right, so let's change businesses. You own a car rental. Now, remember, the laundromat and a car rental aren't that much different. People are going to go out crazy. No, you're renting equipment to the public. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be hammers and jackhammers and chainsaws, but you're renting equipment to the public. Just happens to be cars. And so the thought process for the person who fixes their own equipment and doesn't put it on the profit and loss statement is, so you own a car rental, and at the end of the day, your 8 cars or 12 or 20 cars are rented out. You got 5 in the shop, and those 5 cars, 2 needs a transmission and 1 needs a couple oil changes, and you need a brake job. So when you close the doors at 6 o'clock, you're going to put on your green jeans and you're going to go out there and work till 1 or 2 in the morning repairing your own equipment, and then wake up tomorrow morning and do the same thing again. And he goes, that's not how businesses are run. There's a line item for that. And the reason there's a line item for it, because there's a cost associated with that. Now, I think that it's fantastic that you have the time of your life to be able to go in and repair the equipment. I think that's wonderful. And I recommend that all laundry owners repair their own equipment to a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, you should pay yourself for that. So when you pay yourself for that, whatever the going rate is, that's what it should be reflected on that profit and loss statement. And I find that 10 out of 10 times when I look at a listing, and there's 3 things that I look for on a listing, and almost every time I look at them, it's blank, or it doesn't have anything, or the numbers are woefully misrepresented. And so I take the time to either talk to the other broker, or I take the time to talk to the seller and say, it's difficult to sell. You're breaking down trust because most people expect to see this expense on the report and it's not there. And then you have an uphill battle with the seller, with the broker, and then you actually have a hand-holding, confidence-building conversation with your buyer to explain to them what's happening and what the real numbers should be and how it builds on top of it. What people, I think, fail to understand, both sellers and brokers and buyers, for every $500 that isn't stated on the profit and loss statement that the buyer incurs once escrow closes, on an expense that you didn't catch, that is a constant deduct every month. If you're buying at a 4 or 5, buying at a 4 multiple, that's $6,000 a year. That's 20. You just overpaid by $25,000 for that laundromat that you shouldn't have because you missed something or somebody understated something. So it's vitally important that when you slow down, I know you're all excited. I know you all want to buy a laundromat. I mean, I have half a dozen buyers right now that are, you got anything in Orange County? You got anything in the Valley? You got anything in LA? And the questions, well, here's one and here's one and here's one. And the first thing I do is I go, nope, rent to gross ratio's off. Nope, they're understating this. Nope, they're understating that. And I go, so they want $350,000 in the laundry, in my estimation, is only worth $275 because there's a hole. I treat it like it's my money. If I'm not going to invest in it, why would I recommend that somebody who wants to get into the business, who has some hard-earned cash to invest in a laundromat, why would I want to sell them something that I know that it's not going to produce that kind of revenue on a monthly basis? And they're not going to go after the seller. They're going to go after me. And go after me meaning we're going to have that come to Jesus conversation of, why didn't you tell me? Mm-hmm. Why did you miss this? How did you miss this? Mm-hmm. I mean, I have 35 years in this business. I can't miss anything. It doesn't bode well.
Yeah.
And I want them to stay with me. I want them to call me up and say, hey, I got a problem. What's the problem? I don't know what machines to add. Oh, great. What are your turns per day? Great. Let's sit down and have a conversation about your store. And then it goes through, did you survey? Do you have this? Do you have this? Let me see the reports. Let's talk about it. So
I think that's a huge point. And I love that you said for every $500, that's $25,000 of equity that you're overpaying, because I think people don't think about it like that. Right. And it's really easy in this business to miss $500 either in overstated income or understated expenses, which, it's just easy to do because it's really difficult sometimes to pinpoint exactly what a laundromat's doing unless you're working with somebody who has this experience in the industry and can tell the gotchas like the repair costs.
Right. Unless, first of all, it's that trust, the trust that you built up in the beginning. I find that probably a majority, 75, 70, 80%, 80-20 rule, the old 80-20 rule, that it's not the income, it's the expenses.
Yeah.
It's the expenses that are understated more than the income is overstated. Because if the income's overstated, they're paying tax on it. Nobody wants to pay taxes. So they're going to keep that as tight as they possibly can, or even less, which is a benefit to the owner, the guy who's buying it, who he takes over the store and it's doing $1,000 more per month. It's like, hey, wow, this is pretty good. So, but I find that the challenge for us as brokers and as buyers is to make sure that the line items are properly filled out and you're close to being what it truly is, what the expenses are in it. And there's expenses that you can't get away with in the industry, and you know what they are. I mean, everything is verifiable, but gas, water, and electric. Everything else is a fixed payment. Repairs for the most part. But if you're on a contract with somebody, you're paying him $550 a month just to show up once a week to fix whatever's there, and then it's plus parts. So even part of that is a fixed expense you can call fixed. Rent's fixed, insurance is fixed, labor's usually fixed because you don't want to fluctuate hours by giving employees more hours. And that's the other thing. What's your coverage? And are you paying them the going rate at $14.50 or $15 an hour in LA now, or Orange County? I think it's $14 or $15 an hour. And how many hours do you have your coverage? And then the conversation becomes between us is, when do you need coverage? And what is important coverage? So old rule of thumb, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday. Those are your busy days of the week. And you could go into a laundromat on any Wednesday and shoot a shotgun and not hit anybody. Like, I get clients coming and go, well, we went to the laundromat on Wednesday at 1:00 in the afternoon and there was nobody there. They're not doing the volume. Wait, stop, time out. Yep. It doesn't work that way. They're all creatures of habit.
Yep.
Go there Saturday afternoon at 4:00 and then let's talk. So, they don't know that. So you talk about cyclicals, and then you talk about cyclicals for the year. So I used to have a graph. I don't have it now, but it used to show a mean line with the calendar, January, February, March, April, all the way across. And then on the left-hand side, it would show 115 and 85. And you'd start in January and you'd loop it down and it would go right through the summer months. So it would be just after school got out when we were in school, which would be mid-June, through July and August, which would be down to the 85. And then out of August, it would start to creep back up. Come September, school would start again.
Right back up.
Yep. And then it would go up, and then you'd have this cycle. And you'd say, okay, so they're doing a collection in July. Well, the laundry's off 50%. It's not doing the volume. Relax. It is. It's people wear less clothing during the summer. Therefore, the volumes are down. If you were doing a collection in January, you'd be all giddy saying, oh my God, it's doing 50% more than it should. I'm stealing it. Okay. But that's not how it goes, because you're doing an average for what the volumes are. So those are some of the things that I talk to clients with when I sit down with them and say, here's kind of a benchmark for you to look at when you look at laundromats. And again, it goes back to, and then it goes daily. I mean, each laundromat's different daily. But usually the afternoons are busier than the lunchtime, and the mornings are sometimes busier. But remember, they're all creatures of habit, and everybody has their time that they like to go to a laundromat. And nobody likes to do laundry. It's not something that we all like to do. It's probably one of the least likely chores. I mean, I can tell you, I hate doing laundry.
Well, which is one of the reasons pickup and delivery is starting to take off right now.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
And which didn't exist when I started. It was It wasn't even a thought, not even an afterthought. It wasn't even a thought. Somebody could probably fill me in on this. I don't know when the evolution or the evolution of it came and blew up. I don't know if it was 2005, 2010, but it's arrived. There's a lot of conversations on that, and I find that one of the interesting conversations I've had with people that have laundromats that do wash, dry, and fold. And then they're like, I need another location. And you go, well, why do you need another location? And they go, well, because I can't do the volume. I don't have a big enough store. And one of the first things they say is go rent a laundromat from somebody else. Make a deal with the guy down the street that you'll take over his laundromat from 12 till 6 in the morning. He gets all your quarters, whatever it costs you to do your laundry, it doesn't matter. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat instead of spending $250,000 for a new location and be liable for the lease and all those other things that go associated with it and what have not. So there's more than one way to skin a cat when you want to grow that wash, dry, and fold. And this is now becoming more of a wash, dry, fold clientele, particularly in the college towns and where you have upwardly mobile people that are pushing out and they don't want to do laundry. I mean, it's quite apparent based on the numbers that I've seen on some of these stores. You're like, you're doing what and how much? And oh my gosh, it's amazing. And learning that is another thing. It's a whole different school of thought and it takes a whole different mindset.
Yeah, it really is like having two different businesses. I mean, you're using the same assets, but you're running two different businesses. You have two different client avatars, clientele types. And so, one is a logistics company, which is pickup and delivery. It's a logistics business, right?
Right.
And Laundromat is not that at all, right? You're renting equipment out, like you said. And, so it's definitely a different mindset, but you're utilizing the same assets. And it's another way that you can get those turns per day up on your machines, without necessarily even drawing more customers from your immediate area.
Right. The question is that which machines do you dedicate and how do you dedicate it? And how do you monitor
all the logistics? That's it. Yeah.
And you're right. You have a delivery company and you have a labor company. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then you have the management. And one of the challenges that laundry owners face today is when we started Lucy's, I had the privilege and the honor to work with John Gorman, one of the original founders of Taco Bell. And one of the things that stuck with me was we asked John, at what point in time do you need a manager? And he says the average owner can run 5 Taco Bells before he needs help. Just to give you an idea. I think that in today's marketplace, since you do have 3 organizations within one organization, you as an owner have to choose which part of the organization you want to run in order to do it effectively. So I've seen it and I've talked to these owners. You've got an owner that has 3 stores. 2 of them do, one of them does just laundry, wash, regular self-service, and the other one does self-service and wash, dry, and fold. And so you have, in my book, you actually have 4 companies within your company. The challenge is being effective and being good at all of them. And then the smartest one is taking a step back and saying, what am I really good at? And what do I need help at? And then you solicit the help to get the other areas covered, because it's hard to run your three laundromats as it is. It's hard to run 3 laundromats, filling up soap and bleach and the candy and the snack and all that stuff and running that happen. Now you've got a delivery company for 4 vehicles, 2 vehicles, 4 vehicles that you're watching all the time. Are they getting maintained? Who smashed it? How's the insurance in place? I mean, so, I see posts all the time, which is, I didn't know we had this scratch on this van and there's a big hole in the side of it. Could you at least tell me when you did it? I didn't know what happened. Okay. All right. So you have you have these segments. And in order to get better, and in order to be proficient at what you do, you as the owner have to step back and say, I'm at my breaking point, and now I need someone to handle what you said, which was logistics, which is a big portion of this business. Where are you going? How long does it take you to get there? And the routes and what have not. And then you have the people actually doing the work, which is another segment. And then you have the overall financial books that you're running for the profitability of the business. So there's 4 or 5 hats that as an owner is wearing. And as the more stores you open up, the more you have to take a step back and say, where am I failing, or where do I need help at in order to maintain and grow this company in the right direction? And I think at some point in time, you'll have owners that are frozen. They want to grow, but they're frozen because it's like, I'm 16 hours a day at this, and I'm still not getting to that level of proficiency that I need or I want to see from it. And you got buddies elbowing you to, hey man, have you done this? Have you done that? Or hey, and you've talked to guys like you who own 2 stores or 4 stores, and they're giving you tidbits, and you sit back and you go home and you go, oh my God, I'm not doing this right, or I need help. And then it's, what does the help cost me, and how much beneficial is it going to be to me? And what area do I want to take over? And what area am I weak at that I want somebody else to run for me? Mm-hmm. And that's the challenge that's faced with people that are doing the wash, dry, and fold along with self-service laundry. It's something that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, definitely a whole big beast. A lot of opportunity there, especially right now. I think it's just getting started. It's going, but I think there's plenty of room for it to grow. But it's definitely a whole different beast.
I think it's one of the other segments that you and I would like to probably talk at another cast about what the industry needs from our perspective here. And remember, we're kind of myopic here. West Coast is a lot different than the East Coast and the Midwest, I guarantee. In fact, a funny note, I see more people buying used equipment in the Midwest than anywhere else. I'm like, I would never buy used equipment unless I was just starting a store and I needed to see if that worked so that I could build it up and buy new equipment. But they trade, I've seen pictures of 40-year-old Sissels, and they're like, hey, will these work? And I'm going, what do you have that dryer for? So anyways, there are some areas that you and I could talk about in improving this industry. We talked about lint. We talked about repair. We talked about 2 areas of repair: physical repair of the equipment, and then actual repair of the electronics, for lack of a better description. Yeah. And that includes DVRs. That includes security systems. Most of the security companies out there, you're on a 3-year lease. And if you bail after a year and a half, they want the 18 months of money that they would have gotten had you stayed on the track, you sold the business, whatever. They want the $1,800 to get out of the contract. And it's like, how does that work? Yeah. So there's some areas here that we could look at and discuss on how to improve this leg of the business to give the owners that we know and the people that we know in this business a leg up on running their laundromat.
I love that. Maybe we could even do like a little running series at some point or something. Let's talk about that. Yeah. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I think that'd be really helpful for people.
Yeah, I think so too.
But we have a little segment that I want to get to called the secret sauce.
Listen up. It's the secret sauce.
Secret sauce is this question is, hey, what tips can you give to current owners? What's your maybe like your number 1 or 1 or 2 tips that you can give to current owners to help them improve their business right now?
Well, I think I gave you 2 in the beginning, 2 already.
You've given a ton.
You need more laundry carts, and you need to assess which ones you need. And I know you can get extenders so they can't take them out the door, but I think laundry carts are a big plus to keep your customers in place. The other one was the makeup air, which I think is a huge area. One of the things that I still do to this day, which you're going to think is funny, is when I meet with an owner at a laundromat and we're going to talk about I just stop by Charlie and say, hey, Charlie, what's going on? He goes, hey, I'll be at the laundromat. Okay, I'll go by and see him just to keep the relationship going. And, maybe they've had a laundromat for 3 or 4 years, and maybe I assisted them in buying it. Maybe I didn't. I just know who they are, and I go in and talk with them. And I always can find something operationally that I can point out and say, if I were you, I would, here's, okay. And the makeup air is one. And basically I would take a piece of paper or a wad of lint or something I could find in the trash can, like a bounce, and I'd go to the door that has access to the back of the dryers, and I'd get them. I'd bend down and put this piece of paper or whatever I have right at the bottom of the door, and it would just get sucked right in. So I said, your dryers they're just starving for air. You can't give them enough air. So I tried to say, look, there's 3 things you can do. Dryers like to do this. This is how they talk about the circulation. You get the makeup air to combustion air to exhaust.
Right.
Okay? So at the top, I would put in the ceilings, you put the egg crates, which allows the air to go up and in front of the dryers and get sucked into the top above the T-bar ceiling. And those are the egg crate ceiling tiles that they make. Mm-hmm. And then if you don't do that, I put exhaust fans above the curtain wall, above the dryers, to suck and force the air behind the dryers. And then below, I sometimes tell people to cut a hole in that door to allow the air to get to and fro in the bottom of it to create a venturi effect that will feed those dryers and give them more air, which if they get more air and they're burning properly, your gas bill is going to drop. Mm-hmm. It's just a natural phenomenon. And then you can always call your local gas company, and in Southern California Gas, and you can have them come out and they'll tell you whether or not your pilot lights are burning at the right color. They'll just look at it and go, too rich, too starved, or whatever. Then you can get a game plan together with your mechanic on how to make sure that those dryers get what they need in order to burn efficiently. And those 2 points right there, I think, are the laundry carts and the makeup air will allow you to, one, save money, but actually your customers will be a lot happier and you'll have more satisfaction in your laundromat if you can do those 2 things.
I love the secret sauce because we've never heard anything like those 2 tips. So, I mean, I think those are great tips and they're super actionable, right? Like you can go out, jump online right now and order laundry carts and have them delivered, in the next week to your laundromat. So get out there and do it. I'll probably go order a couple more. I'm not quite at that 10 per 1,000 square feet. So I know I need to add a few.
I'm going to give you an Andy tour. Okay. And I'm going to talk about laundry carts. So Jordan calls me on the phone and says, hey, I'm thinking about buying a laundromat. And I'll go, okay, send me the setup sheet. And I'll get the setup sheet and I'll mark up the setup sheet and I'll send it back to you. And we'll talk about the cash flow. And you go, I still like the laundry. Let's take a look at it. So when I drive up to a location, now it doesn't matter if it's a new location that you want to build a new store or it's an existing laundromat. So I'm driving down the street and I look at the location and I pass it. And I drive, depending upon where I'm at, a half a mile east, a half a mile north, a half a mile west, and a half a mile south. And I will survey what's there. Now, when I come back to this location, the first thing I'm looking for, is it on the corner? Does it have a signal or a stop sign? Is there a crosswalk? Is it in line? Meaning, is it down the street and it's not on a corner? And is there a competitor across the street? Are all the apartments or the rental houses across the street? People have to walk across. Well, most women and their little chicklins are not going to walk across the street if there's a laundromat on their side. Okay. And the only way they'll do that is if they're a crosswalk. And if it's a big boulevard, forget it. I'm also looking at, what are the natural boundaries? Is there a river? Is there a freeway? Is there a railroad track? These are going to prevent people from coming. They're natural barriers. Okay. Particularly in the cities and the neighborhoods that you and I are used to looking at and seeing, you're like, oh, okay. Natural barriers. And then I look at parking, exposure, ingress and egress in the shopping center. Where is the laundry in the shopping center? Is it in the crotch where the 2 points meet? Does it have a lot of glass? Are there drink and snack and vending machines and candy machines all blocking the glass so that people can't see out and people can't see in? Another safety factor. I don't like machines. I don't like anything in my windows if I can avoid it. I get everything out of my windows. I want the people in there to be able to see out, and I want somebody to be able to see in to see what's going on, because at night, that's what you need. Okay, I'm going to go at night to see if the parking lot's well lit. And if it's not, I'm going to mark down the lights that are out and tell the guy and get the landlord to fix those lights because you don't have any safety or security here. Then I'm going to look at who my tenants are. Liquor store, barbershop, nail salon, dental store. These all eat up parking. So during my normal hours, they're going to compete with me for parking. After hours, most of these aren't open. I get the parking. But how much of that is my business? 30%, 35, 40% at night. So I then get out of my car, and is it safe to get out? Is there parking in front of the laundromat? Or is the parking in the parking lot and I'm walking 20 or 30 feet to get into the laundry? And then I look at you and say, where are my laundry carts? And I walk in there, and you'll be surprised. You'll laugh. The next time you go into a laundromat and your competitors, you're just going to start to laugh. You're going to go, this guy's only got 11 laundry carts and he has 3,000 square feet. How are you surviving? I mean, you want to spend, what are they, $1.50 now? $1.30, $1.50? Give me 5, just under $1,000, $750, right? You could pick up. The average laundry customer is between $50 and $70 a month. That's a family of 3.5. Okay. So what if you picked up 2 more people because you have carts? You have no idea. It's just another thing. So now I'm looking at carts. I walk in the door and I'm looking at the floor and I'm looking at the ceiling. Now, ceiling tiles. Another pearl for you, for our customers. Okay. You have a leak in the roof. Everybody does. Okay. Well, it could be condensation, okay, from the pipes, okay? It could be an actual leak, but you don't know. And it's not for you to worry about. When you replace that tile, don't replace it. Take the new tile and put the new tile underneath it and leave the water tile above it so it acts like a sponge, and you will save on ceiling tiles because it'll absorb whatever moisture's coming through because it already has. It just looks bad. Now you have a clean tile up there for the most part. For another 6 months, it's going to stay clean. When it starts to leak, you take the old one off, you put another one underneath it, and it acts like a sponge. Simple way to save your ceiling and make it look nice.
That's a good tip.
Okay. So now you walk into the laundromat and you're looking around, and what am I looking for? I know that trash on the floor isn't going to push people away. Overflowing trash cans will, because then it's going to go on top of the counter. Then it's going to go here. Also, the the Watchman newspapers that you don't get to advertise in my laundromat unless you want to pay for it. There's no rent. There's no this. There's none of those bulletin boards that they have outside or inside. All trash. No phones. We all have cell phones now. But I could tell you a story of when I was when I first did Lucy's in Inglewood, where we had a drug problem outside and there were 4 phones. And phones, like newspaper racks, they can put anywhere they want. They're not regulated. But if you touch them, it's grand theft. They can put them where they want, but you can't touch them. So they wouldn't take the phones out. So I just set about leaving every night. I would take silicone caulk and I would fill in the quarter slots with silicone. And it only took me about a month, and they removed the phones. Even after I asked them to remove the phones, because it was a drug problem and people weren't coming to my laundromat. That was me. And this was 1987 or something like that.
Yeah. Not an issue anymore. For those of you who don't know, there used to be phones that you put quarters into to be able to call people. These are called pay phones.
Right. So now I'm in the laundromat. So I'm looking for trash. I'm looking for the ceiling. And now I'm looking at the overall layout of the store. And as I walk through it, I either chuckle or I smile, because I'm looking at, those are 35-pound milliners. Those are 35 years old. I mean, Okay. Now I'm okay. All right. 16 quarters. All right. $4. Okay. All right. Okay. 35. All right. Okay. You're in the right range. Okay. All right. And you see 8 of them and 4 are working and 4 look like they've just got baseball bat beaten. And you're like, I don't understand this. And then you look in there and you go, okay, so I do a quick poundage reading on the machines. And I don't care what your machine is, 1020s, 830s. I'm doing my math. And then I just look at all the dryers, and every dryer is a 30 pounder unless they're new ones. And I do the math and I see if they have the proper amount of ratio of poundage to poundage. Again, I like to have a little more. Sometimes you have a little less. But now I'm looking at mix. I'm looking at flow. Do I have machines that are against a wall so that, and they don't do it anymore. They used to. I haven't seen too many today, but I like to see a free-flowing laundromat where people can walk in the laundromat without getting stopped. Mm-hmm. In the older days, they used to have some laundromats where the machines came out of the walls. And if you were doing your washing, you were in there, you had no way to escape. Well, that's just making the person who's doing their laundry fearful that they can't get out of a situation if someone came in the door and said, how do I get out of here? So I'm looking at the layout. I'm looking at the equipment. I'm looking at the age of the equipment. I'm looking at, are all the lights on? Do they have lights? Are they all working? Are they all functional? And then I leave the store and I sit down in my car and I rate ingress and egress. And that's how I look at a laundromat every time I go to a new laundry. And I count the laundry carts and I give it a grade. And then I sit down with you and say, here's what my discovery was at this particular laundromat. Here's where I think you can improve. You can call me today and say, come down and look at my laundromat. Tell me what you think of them, because I haven't been into your stores. So I'd be more than happy to do that. So, but it just takes another set of eyes, not yours. And it's one of those like, hey, I think I'll do this every 6 months. I'll just have somebody come in and look at my store from their perspective. And it could be another owner that you know in Orange County. Say, hey, come by and rip my store apart. And you get that. I mean, because you realize you're really not in competition with each other.
Right.
You're just trying to gain the mass of people that need their clothing washed. And how do I provide for them? So your competition is really yourself. How can I provide this neighborhood? And you and I can talk about in the future, we can do another podcast of demographics, how they impact you. What do they really mean? What do you look for? What's the average family spend? An example, I'll just give you a little tidbit. Somebody said, I look at renters and I get it down to a number and I multiply that number I divide it by the number of people per household. And in Hispanic communities, I know that it's probably double. So if they say there's 3.5, there's 6 people living in that house. It's just the way they work. But that household is $50 to $70 per household. So you're doing $25,000 in your laundromat, not including wash, dry, and fold, and not including vending, because vending is an adjunct to your wash. Mm-hmm. I take that $25,000 and I divide it by Orange County. I'm going to divide it by 60. You've got 425 permanent customers coming to your shopping center every week to do their wash. Those are your numbers. And if you wanted to, you could sit down and put a percentage to each day of the week, Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, and you could figure out approximately how many people are coming into your laundromat on Fridays as a percentage, and then divide that by 16 hours. You're going to go, geez, I don't have a lot of people coming in here. Now the question becomes, how do I get them in here?
Right.
And then it goes back to, if I had more parking, I could do more volume. If I had more volume, I need more dryers. If I had more dryers, I need more washers. And now it becomes one of those, oh my God, I'm chasing my tail here. But that's, when you're doing that, then you're doing it right.
I love that. I mean, again, the systematic approach is something that I think is missing. Even with most brokers that I've worked with, that I've seen, they're not taking the systematic approach. A lot of them are just kind of basing off their experience. And so they have like these, general knowledge where they can kind of get ballpark and stuff like that. But I love the systematic approach. And again, treating your business like a business, right? And that's right. What you're doing. That's what you're saying when you're going through. I mean, I was taking all kinds of notes while you were talking about your process and stuff like that, because I think even just having an owner do that for themselves. And I love the advice of having somebody come in every 6 months and just tear your laundromat apart. It terrifies me to death to have that happen, but it's way better to be critiqued by somebody who knows and to be able to make, adjustments to improve your business than to be ignorant of that stuff and not feel that uncomfortable feeling of saying, hey, here's some things that I'm not doing optimally that I could do better. Right. That feels scary to me, but ultimately, if you want to grow your business, it's like that whole like iron sharpens iron kind of thing, right? You have somebody come in and telling you how to improve your business. It's only going to benefit you. And as important, it's going to benefit your customers and your community that your laundromat's in. Right.
You'll laugh, and I'm going to use you so that everybody can see that you're human. When was the last time you surveyed your competition?
Oh, I was thinking this. I don't even want to talk about that. I was like, man, I need to go back. It's probably been 2 years at least since I've gone out and looked at the competition.
And you'd be surprised. I'll give you a story. I got a guy in LA, and we found out that he only has one competitor. That competitor has equipment the same age as his equipment, which is 20 years. So this neighborhood has not had a resurgence of new equipment for 20 years. That's shocking. But it's also a benefit to him because we went in there and said, what do we need to change? How do we need to change it based on the competition and based on the machines that the other competitor has? We're going to put new equipment in here. You'll do just fine. Mm-hmm. Because in that case, since they haven't seen new equipment, once they see new equipment, it's not so much that it's new, it's they know it'll work.
Right. Yep.
And even if it's a quarter more, it won't matter. They'll be at his door. So.
Well, we have another. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, no, that was awesome, man. I mean, that whole secret sauce thing was incredible. Right. There was so much good stuff in there. I mean, you've given already a ton of tips for newbies, but we have a section called Pro Tips.
Pro Tips.
And that's if you have a piece of advice to give to somebody buying their first laundromat, what would you tell them?
Go there late at night so you're comfortable that you know that that's the laundry you want to own.
Mm-hmm.
Move very slowly and methodically. In your analysis and investigations, don't give up when it doesn't fly right the first time, because it's not going to fly right the first time. Trust the process with your broker. And realize that once you get to escrow, the escrow officer rules. The broker, the seller, and the buyer have no say. Because the escrow officer has her own set of rules that she has to work by. Mm-hmm. And she's only asking for information in order to close that escrow. Don't open escrow unless you have a deal, unless you have verified several things. Escrow, in my estimation, is good for three things. You're legally good to transfer the business. You're going to get a bill of sale. You need an assignment of lease, and you got your financing. Mm-hmm. And those are the only three things that I look at when I talk to my clients about what escrow means. The rest of it, you get to do collections. You get to learn about the business. You get to be trained on it. But that's all what the escrow officer does. And trust in the fact that that's the process. There is no control after once it gets to escrow. It's out of our hands. Yeah. And most people don't understand that. They think you can manipulate something. And it's like, she's got her own rules. That's what they're for. They're a neutral party.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome pro tips. I think those are great things for newbies to be thinking of. Again, a lot of unique tips there that we haven't heard before on the podcast. So really, really good stuff. And we haven't really talked about escrow at all, I don't think, on the podcast. So, I mean, at least bringing that up, I appreciate that. And maybe we can do something later on down the line talking about escrow too. Okay. Well, I have two more questions for you. The first one is, do you have any resources that you would recommend? I feel like there's not a ton of resources. There are resources out there, but there's not a ton out there. But do you have any that you would recommend?
Besides me?
I mean, you, of course. But that's going to be my next question. By the way.
No. It's I don't have anything explicit because I haven't really gotten out of my box and looked at what's available out there. I know there's some videos out there that I haven't really watched yet. I've seen a couple of podcasts that are interesting. And I like the way the podcasts are going and the topics that they're covering, because it's covering a broader spectrum than I am seeing in my world. Mm-hmm. And then what else? Lost my train of thought.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I think it's a tough question, and I find this is a tough question for a lot of people. And I think my kind of takeaway is that we need more resources for people out there. If almost no one can give me specific laundromat related resources.
Source material.
Yeah.
Material.
Yeah. There's almost nobody who's come on the podcast who can do that. Some will give like business books or something like that, but right. I think there's a distinct lack of resource. And I will just say that as Laundromat Resource, one of my missions personally is to get some more specific laundromat resources out there and to give voice to people like you and people like other people in this industry who know this business backwards and forwards, who have a lot to give, and to give, you guys a voice to be able to share your wisdom. Moral of the story.
I'd be happy to participate and help you out.
Need more resources. So let's talk more about that. All right. Yeah. My very last question for you is, man, I know a ton of people are going to get a lot out of this interview. Some of them may want to contact you either, to consult with you or, to use you as a broker or whatever the case may be. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
My email address, my phone.
Okay. You want to shoot me that email address?
Yeah. AJC at a Cunningham ENT.com.
Okay. And again, that'll be in the show notes. If you're on YouTube, that's in the description. So if you want to get a hold of Andrew, that's the best way to do that. The email, his phone number is there. And Andrew, this has been awesome. It's been great just hearing literally decades worth of wisdom. And I know we just scratched the surface, but there was so much good stuff that I think is going to help a lot of people with their businesses, or those trying to get their first laundromat. It's going to help them get pointed in the right direction. And that is the whole goal of everything we're doing here. So I really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
I've had a blast. I didn't have any idea how it would be. This is my first podcast and doing this.
Yeah, right.
But, this is what I do daily, and it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy what I do. And I would like to help out whoever needs help to make it a better experience for them and make money, which is what the reason we're in the business for.
Love it. Well, appreciate it, and looking forward to chatting again next time. Thanks, man.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
All right, you too. All right. That was a doozy. I know that was, there was so much in there that holy cow, man, my head feels like it's going to explode after listening to that whole, Andrew just like giving fountains of knowledge about the industry and about his history. It is all so fascinating to me. He just has these deep roots, this history in the industry, and also just all this knowledge that he shared with us. Super cool. For me, the takeaway, again, I tell you every single episode, pick one thing to take it away and put it into action this week. So wherever you're at on your laundromat journey, find something from this episode, put it into action, and let's stack those actions on top of each other. For me, it's a simple one. I need to get some more laundry carts, apparently. So I am going to go order some laundry carts for my laundromats. All right, pick something for you. Let me know what you end up doing. I'd love to hear what actions you guys are taking. Hit me an email at jordan@laundromatresource.com, or better yet, head over to the forums, laundromatresource.com/forums, and have a conversation about the action steps you're taking from these episodes. All right. Cannot wait to see you next week. Another awesome episode next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed this one. We will see you next time.